absolutely ruthless, completely merciless killer. He doesn't get great excitement over it. He just he thinks killing is just killing. So somebody like that is going to be a very serious problem for us.
Danny closes his mouth and reaches out to a small underground newspaper. He lifts the front page of the Urban Farce and examines a caricature of his legend. Now, a bunch of idiots were making a complete joke of his creation. With parody. With goddamn parody. The worst genre that ever existed. A bloated parasite that fed off the creation of others. The artist took a few vague statements about a ghost-like figure with a gaping mouth and turned those perfectly crafted statements into a joke. An absolute joke. Now, more than ever, he realises that he'll have to get a proper likeness of his terrifying mask out to the public before everything he's worked towards is undone by a caricature. The story of Danny Johnson is a terrifying one. His characteristics and his placement as one of the original killers to wear the Ghostface mask all but complement his achievements before his famed killing spree in 1993. In many ways, Danny was darker than the Ghostfaces that appeared in the Scream franchise. He was calculated, murderous, and escaped justice due to his creativity and ability to cover his tracks. Hello everyone and welcome to today's installment of Beyond the Mask. Today, we're going to be taking a look at the twisted backstory of the original Ghostface serial killer, which is a backstory that is set up in the Dead by Daylight video game. When the game acquired the rights to use the Ghostface character, they weren't able to specifically use the killers who appeared in the Scream franchise, so they cleverly wrote their own prequel of sorts in a way of creating their own unique version, but also allowing the character to obtain characteristics and traits that relate to Ghostface from the movies. With this, an entire backstory was created, which concluded before the events of 1996, but also served as a backstory to how the Ghostface mask became famous. Now, following the release of the character, Dead by Daylight managed to obtain some rights to the Scream franchise and incorporated the costume as part of a skin that could be purchased in-game. The backstory now all but contributes to the history of Ghostface. Whilst not specifically stated as canon, there's hints that this backstory does serve as the origins of a killer within the universe, and also serves as a prequel to the Ghostface mask that we see in mass production in the Scream franchise. But what made this backstory so dark in comparison to the killers of Scream? How did the mask come to be? And what exactly happened to Danny following his famed killing spree in 1993? Let's dive straight in. It's established through game lore that Danny Johnson's father was the one who introduced Danny to a darker world. His father was a war veteran, but also a disturbed individual who had committed acts of murder himself. He taught Danny how to stalk and murder victims, but also how to do it with efficiency. Danny couldn't bring himself to kill initially. However, one night something just changed within him as he turned his own training onto his father and murdered him during a camping trip. Thus begun the beginnings of this dark killer. Danny strategically placed himself as a journalist who analysed true crime and reported about sinister deeds committed in his hometown. He changed his name and became known as Jed Olson. His examination of crime and his own teachings at the hand of his father eventually led to Danny's own lust for death building inside of him. He wanted to kill, but he also enjoyed the attention and fame that serial killers received following their captures. Not intending on being caught, Danny began crafting an identity that could disguise who he was, but also become recognisable to the public and generate fear. And thus, he designed and crafted the Ghostface mask. Wearing this designed costume, Danny began a series of murders. Reports suggested victims were mixed-aged at the time, with there being no specific pattern to how these kills were carried out. One of his victims' diaries, however, stated she felt she was being followed for days before her death. Homes were broken into, belongings were moved around the house in some sick, twisted game that he was playing between himself and his victims. His position as a journalist allowed him to spread fear and build up his reputation as a killer, as the killings were headline news constantly. Danny himself often lost himself in his own rage and adrenaline when he was murdering his victims. He often declares he blacks out during the deed and only snaps into reality when he himself has calmed. Interestingly enough, the blackouts only occur when Danny commits murders unmasked. It was as though the mask allowed him to hide behind an identity that disguised the disturbed mind beyond the mask. It was in 1993 when Danny's killing spree reached its peak. He travelled to the town of Roseville in Florida and begun a new killing spree, again positioning himself as a journalist, and created panic through his headlines. The killing spree in Roseville was horrific and one of the most in-universe horrific cases to date. He began filming his victims as he stalked them, and then proceeded to film their murders. The reports surrounding the murders began to mount, and connections were drawn to previous towns that Danny had visited. And this was the downfall of Danny's plan. An investigation was launched which pointed the police towards Danny himself, and enough evidence was discovered that gave the police evidence to make an arrest. Aware of that mounting evidence, this prompted Danny to disappear before he was caught. He went into hiding, but left a cryptic letter behind, claiming responsibility for the Ghostface identity and the murders that had been committed across America. One interesting addition to the story of Danny Johnson is in fact his own discovery that mock-ups of his mask were being created. Following the fear and the recognisability of the mask itself, he discovered that a group were creating a version of the mask, a parody he called it. The masks were a range of mock-ups based around his original design. What was the purpose for this? It's never explained, but it strongly alluded to that these designs were what eventually became Fun World's Frightening Faces line. Danny himself hunted and murdered the designers of these masks. However, the overall design plans were already created and thus likely led to the creation of the line, including the Father Death Halloween costume that became a generic costume following its release. Danny Johnson hasn't been heard of since. Police found enough evidence to warrant an arrest and also discovered his true identity. But by the time of 2023, they haven't been able to locate him. There have been many theories and arrests made based around who was underneath the Ghostface mask during these killing sprees, but as of today, this case continues to remain unresolved. The more time passes, it seems unlikely police will ever catch the true identity of the original Ghostface. If you are unaware, I'm currently working on a novelisation that will continue the Lakewood story that was set up in MTV Scream. The book will serve as a continuation to the story where it left off in Season 2, and has also been okayed by the showrunners of the show, and will have the official Paramount logo attached to it. If you would like early access to the novel, then you can join my Patreon below, where I will be releasing chapters every month over there, so you guys will see how everything goes down before it hits Kindle next year. The link to Patreon is in the description below. But that's it for this video. If you enjoy this type of content, don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video.